Darwin के बिना competition discuss कर नहीं सकते आप लोग. When Darwin spoke of the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest, two features. Struggle for existence, one. Survival of the fittest, two. Two very key points in Darwin's theory of evolution. Darwin's theory of evolution के दो key points. He was convinced that interspecific competition. What is interspecific competition? Competition between members of different species is a potent force in organic evolution. Please underline this statement. Star वार mark करना है, जो भी कर लो यार. बता रहा हूँ क्यों. See, in the last 8 weeks, since the board exam ended on March of 4th, today is May of 3rd, so we were on 8 weeks हुआ है. Every week we have given 4 papers to the senior students, 4 or 5. So we almost crossed 35 to 40 papers now. And out of 40 times, I have used this statement at least 7 to 8 times. I have used this statement. मैंने सेट किया, मुझे मालूम है. Interspecific competition is a potent force in organic evolution. And I have many students coming back with me and telling me, sir, ये statement NCERT का है ही नहीं. बता रहा हूँ क्यों? क्योंकि वो लोग ये statement को evolution में ढूंढते हैं. Actually ये statement किधर है? इधर. So please इसको mark करना, और ये direct सीधा statement आएगा true false के लिए. Second, interspecific के साथ में option डाल देगा. Intraspecific, extraspecific. Understand the trap, no? Please see, I'm just trying to make you aware of where students are making mistakes most. See, every year my attempt is only to make you aware of the mistakes which are being made by the previous batch, which hopefully you should not repeat. Hopefully. Yeah. Now, statement number 1. It is generally believed that competition occurs when closely related species. Please, अब बहुत ध्यान देना. Closely related species. Let's say I take 2 species. A dash. When I use the term closely related species, I am implying that they belong to the same genera. Same genera. Because if I go to family, the relation will be close or not so close. जैसे ऊपर जाऊंगा मैं, the similarities are going to decrease. याद है ना, आप ऊपर जाएंगे decrease, नीचे जाएंगे increase. Specificity will decrease as we go from species to kingdom. And ulta. I hope you remember that point. So closely related species are competing. अगर ये species इतने close है, तो will they have a common resource to take food from? Habit same रहेंगे. So when closely related species are competing for the same resources that are limiting, let's say I mark the resource as R and I say it is limited. That means resources are limited. The species are almost the same. This also wants the resource, this also wants the resource. But ये तो limited है. So is there competition amongst them? Is there competition? See, यहाँ पे 2 points are there. Point number 1, related species. Point number 2, limited resources. 2 point है. What is the author saying? That it is believed that competition will occur when 2 closely related species are competing for the same resource which is limited. Can you identify these 2 points, please? Sentence का मतलब समझ रहे हैं, please, everybody? I'm going very slow, please. I'll read this again. Generally believe that competition occurs when closely related species compete for the same resources that are limiting. But this is not entirely true. आगे पीछे आगे पीछे. See, what he implies is that this is not a general rule. Although logically this may seem to be perfectly correct. If you think it कि हाँ यार दो क्लोज है तो उनका रिसोर्स है क्या, रिसोर्स लिमिटेड है तो कंपटीशन तो होना चाहिए, इट्स ऑब्वियस. बट ही एक्सट्रैक्ट्स एग्जांपल्स फ्रॉम नेचर ना टू काउंटर पॉइंट नंबर वन. पॉइंट नंबर वन क्या है अपना? Related species. Now he says that in a shallow lake you have a flamingo. Obviously they are visitors, right? And you have fishes. And in the lake you have zooplankton. You know what are zooplanktons? Plants or animals? Zoo है, animal होगा ना. Plants aquatic system के herbivorous animals ही है. Phytoplankton producer है. Phytoplankton को कौन खाता है? Zooplankton. So what does zooplankton become? Primary consumer. Zooplankton is the common resource for both of them. The visiting flamingo is also feeding on the zooplankton. The fishes of the water are also feeding on zooplankton. Now tell me, that is the bird not from class A's? It's class A's, na? What about the fishes? Pisces, super class. दोनों में क्या रिलेशन है? कहीं तो जाके gnathostomatum. Are they closely related or unrelated? Unrelated. बहुत दूर एक bird एक fish है. So are they competing? Yes, they are competing. So ये वाला point negate हो गया. What is the author saying? That this is not entirely true. And to explain that why it is not entirely true, is give example. What is point number 2? Limited resources. अच्छा, इसको नेगेट करना है तो क्या एक्सप्लेन करना पड़ेगा? That competition can occur even when resources are unlimited. बराबर ना? इसको नेगेट करना है तो एग्जांपल दिया. अब इसको नेगेट करना है. There is a type of competition. Please towards the board. Let's say you have two competing elements, right? A है और A dash. For example, resource है, but resource unlimited है. At the first instance, you feel अगर resources unlimited है तो क्या टेंशन है यार? तू भी सुखी रहे, मैं भी सुखी रहता हूं यार. झगड़ा क्या करना है अपने को? परफेक्टली लॉजिकल. नहीं बोले, नहीं ऐसा नहीं होता है. वन ऑफ द स्पीशीज will try to interfere in the feeding efficiency of the other. मस्ती. This type of a competition is called interference competition. This type of competition is called interference. Please. In some shallow South American lakes, the key word here is shallow because it's a flamingo. ये shallow को deep कर दिया तो हो गया बंटा डार्क, राइट ना? स्टेटमेंट फॉल्स हो जाएगा फिर तुम्हारा. Visiting flamingos and resident fishes compete for their common food zooplankton. Secondly, resources need not be limiting for competition to occur. In interference competition, ये interference competition कौन से पॉइंट को नेगेट कर रहा है? पॉइंट नंबर 2 को. The feeding efficiency of one species might be reduced due to interfering and inhibitory presence of the other species, even if the resources are abundant. Even if the resources are abundant. So क्या ये दोनों points negate हुआ क्या? So can we take this as a general statement? No. We cannot take this as a general statement. Therefore, competition is best defined as, we come to the definition of competition now. Competition is best defined as the process in which fitness of one species is significantly lower in the presence of another species. I'll explain this, please. Fitness of one species में ब्रैकेट में कुछ लिखा हुआ है, measured in terms of R, और R क्या लिखा हुआ है? The intrinsic rate of increase. यहाँ पे the word fitness, according to Darwin, is reproductive fitness. Darwin was of the opinion that जो species reproductively successful है, it leaves a large amount of progeny, it will survive in the end. So he always measured fitness in terms of reproductive fitness. क्या लिखा है? R. R is intrinsic rate of increase, population increase. So one species whose fitness of one species is lower in the presence of another species, that is called competition. Please mark this as definition of competition. Again, this statement I have used very frequently in the exam. It is relatively easy to demonstrate in lab experiments as Gauss and other experimental ecologists did. This is GAUSE. Physics में GAUSS. Right? Please correct me if I'm wrong. Gauss है ना? काय के लिए? Total normal electric induction flux. उसके लिए ना? हाँ. Right. This is one experiment which I did properly for physics, वरना तो physics मुझे बराबर नहीं आता है. बराबर क्या? मुझे कुछ नहीं आता है. Anyways, you know, when I gave my 12th standard exams, it was purely on the basis of board, right? Then somebody suggested that, अरे why don't you give AIPMT? मैंने वो क्या होता है? So he said, अरे वो ऑल इंडिया लेवल का एग्जाम होता है. तो मुझे लगा, आई नेवर न्यू दैट CBSE had a different syllabus also. Like you can imagine how dumb we were. So we thought that महाराष्ट्र बोर्ड सिलेबस मतलब अल्टीमेट, एंड दैट तो सिलेबस अपने को एकदम अच्छी तरह आता है. 12th का एग्जाम बहुत जोरदार दिया, एकदम 90% आने वाला है. So I applied for AIPMT. I went for the semi center or somewhere in Colaba or something. I went for the center. पेपर देखा. बायो तो कुछ भी फिर थोड़ा समझ में आ रहा है. फिजिक्स तो मेरा एकदम पूरा आउट ऑफ सिलेबस. I never bothered to check back the score also. Right? So even this physics was always a pain in the. For me, I said for me. Like. Anyways, you all are very lucky in the sense to have very good physics teachers. Believe me, I mean it. ठीक है. When resources are limited, the competitively superior species will eventually eliminate the other species. When resources are limited, competitively superior will eliminate the other species. But evidence for such exclusion in nature is not always conclusive. I told you, बहुत गंदा होता है. See what examples they are giving. Now Darwin had visited an island called Galapagos, और उस पे there was a tortoise by the name of Abingdon tortoise. It's specific for Galapagos Islands only. On that island, they introduced goats. Now goat, a herbivore, tortoise, herbivore, both feeding on plants. But the feeding efficiency of the goat was far superior than that of the tortoise. So ultimately resource सब ज़्यादा किसको मिल रहा है? Goat को मिल रहा है. So within a decade, 10 years के अंदर, the tortoise on that land became extinct. it was eliminated. So the competitively superior has eliminated the competitively inferior. Another evidence for occurrence of competition in nature, ये वाले पैराग्राफ के साइड में you can write this example here. First, just listen and see the example, understand the example, and then make a note of it, please. Now here the organism which they have discussed is a barnacle. Barnacle is an arthropod, right? Sharing same characteristics, just like small miniature version of crabs and this thing. उसके जैसा ही है थोड़ा barnacle. Now we have two barnacles, one competitively superior, one competitively inferior. तो अपने पास एक है जिसका नाम है Balanus, and the second was Cathamellus. So Balanus को I'll write B and Cathamellus को I'll write C. The superior was Balanus. Now if in this area Balanus is competitively superior, so who will obviously have a more population? The Balanus का population will be more, क्योंकि है ना what is more now? Reproductive fitness is more. So the population of Balanus in this area was more. And bichara Cathamellus, chupchap, cannot do anything because it is comparatively inferior. So is this a normal state now? So this is a small experiment that ऐसे area में एक organism जिसका geographical range का restricted is restricted. Why is it restricted? Because the comparatively superior is existing here. कुछ नहीं कर सकता बेचारा. So if you experimentally remove the superior one from this area, what will happen to इसका population? Increase. It will increase. Not even increase dramatically. So this is called as competitive release. Isn't it being released from the competition? A species whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area. ये किसकी बात चल रही है? Cathamellus की. Because of the presence of a competitively superior species, किसकी बात चल रही है? Balanus. It is found to expand its distributional range. ये its का मतलब inferior. When the competing species is experimentally removed. So यहाँ पर competing species का मतलब क्या है? Superior, Balanus. Connell's elegant field experiment showed that on rocky sea coast of Scotland, the larger and competitively superior barnacle Balanus dominates the intertidal area and excludes. ये exclude का मतलब Gauss's exclusion principle है. Excludes का मतलब होता है कि competitively superior excludes, removes, eliminates the inferior one. उसको बोलते हैं excludes. The smaller barnacle Cathamellus from that zone, in general, herbivores and plants appear to be more adversely affected by competition than obviously plants because of lack of motility. Simple. So Gauss's competitive exclusion principle, again statement comes as a question. Two closely related species competing for the same resource. Two closely related species competing for the same resource cannot coexist indefinitely. Cannot coexist indefinitely. यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है, मैं वही पढ़ रहा हूँ. And the inferior one will be eliminated eventually. This may be true if resources are limiting, but not otherwise. More recent studies do not support such gross centralization. ये तीसरा इंस्टेंस देखो, बैकट्रैक किया उसने अभी. So every time you read a statement from this chapter, please evaluate it on its merit and spare a minute for reading it once more. हाँ, we'll come to it when we cross that bridge. Okay. Yes. Now, अब जनरल स्टेटमेंट क्या है अपना कि क्लोजली रिलेटेड स्पीशीज एक ही लिमिटेड रिसोर्स के पीछे भाग रहे हैं. सो क्या उनका आपस में कोएग्जिस्टेंस हो सकता है? नहीं. सुपीरियर विल एलिमिनेट द इंफीरियर. ठीक है. Now the example again is very interesting here. This study was done by Cornell and this was done by MacArthur. It was done on barnacle. Here the bird was warbler. Now MacArthur was studying the life cycle of these birds called warblers and different species. So he found that these warblers, 5 different species, same animal, 5 different species were on the same tree. This was a little unique because the rule says that different closely related species, limited resource, एक ही ट्री है, तो उसपे सबसे जो ज्यादा सुपीरियर है वही रहना चाहिए. But he found out that they were not competing against each other. Instead of that, they had divided the resource. Why not divide the resource and live happily instead of competing and killing each other? Makes sense, no? This is nature's way of evolution. So this is called resource partitioning. Resource partitioning. You remember freshwater fishes, clarias, magur, है कि नहीं? The freshwater, right? They were each other's competitors. Catla, right? ये सब competitors थे. They were eliminating each other. Then ultimately they found that the way was they divided the waters amongst themselves. The one fish was found in the upper part of the waters, one in the middle part of the waters, and the lower part of the waters. Why not divide the entire resource and live happily? So instead of competing, they are coexisting now. So extinction will go down now. So this is called resource partitioning. So such examples in nature are the reasons that the author says that ये generalization नहीं कर सकते हम लोग. You can't generalize. एक ने statement दे दिया, दूसरे ने बोला नहीं ऐसा नहीं है, देखो example तो है सामने. You can't generalize it. Logically this may be right, but what about this example then? ये देखो. While they do not rule out the occurrence of interspecific competition, they point out that species facing competition might evolve. The key word here is evolve. Evolution. Mechanisms that promote coexistence rather than exclusion. Promoting coexistence rather than exclusion. Eliminate नहीं कर रहा है, साथ में रहेंगे. ठीक है ना, हम साथ साथ एकदम. One such mechanism is resource partitioning. If two species competing for the same resource, they could avoid competition by choosing different times for feeding, different foraging patterns. MacArthur showed that 5 closely related species of warblers living on the same tree were able to avoid competition and coexist due to behavioral differences in their foraging. Foraging is looking out for food. So the method of looking out for food may be different with respect to time, with respect to the nature of food. Right? So the differences in their behavior for foraging. So they were now coexisting rather than competing. Right? So see, this entire paragraph of competition demands a lot of introspection. Now please, बहुत ध्यान से पढ़ना पड़ेगा. Please, ये ट्रेन में पढ़ने वाला पैराग्राफ नहीं है. हाँ, DCT के लिए ट्रेन में, रिक्शा में पढ़ने वाला पैराग्राफ नहीं है. Believe me, you'll get it wrong. And in one lecture we only done 2 relationships. और जब बाकी के 4 करेंगे तो एक पार्ट खत्म हुआ, फिर 2 पार्ट of the chapter still remaining. So this chapter is a little big. It might take 3 lectures also for us